Good morning, dudes. I wanted to do a quick video on this knife. This is the Sharp by Design Mini Evo. And back when I first got this knife, I said in my review that it was a perfect knife. Not the perfect knife, not the best knife ever, just a perfect knife. And it's been probably maybe even close to a year since then. And I want to give you my updated thoughts on this. I carry this pretty regularly, not like all the time, but every time I do carry it, I am reminded how good it is. And today is one of those days. I threw it in my pocket when I was going out the door, and I'm sitting here in my truck before I start working, just looking at it, and yeah, I still think it's a perfect knife. This thing is really, really good, and you can still get them, I believe, in some different various retailers. It came in this version with the drop point, and then it came in a sort of a harpoon tanto kind of thing, which looked really cool, but this is the more useful one, and I think the better looking one, honestly. This is such a good looking knife. There's nothing like crazy weird going on with it. But it has this little flare right here, the flipper tab, and the way the sharpening trail kind of arcs back in there and then flows into the flipper tab. That's the kind of focal point for the knife, I think, is this, well, with the pivot too, kind of this whole area right here. And then your eyes kind of drift over this way, they kind of flow along this swedge up the tip, they sweep down here with the nice, really nice drop point blade shape. The handle kind of comes in a straight line, but it's not completely straight. It's got a little, barely perceptible dip right here for your thumb. And then it kind of comes back. I love how this inlay follows this line. It kind of swoops up and then down. And by the way, this inlay is done to perfection. It's a micarta inlay, which I think looks incredible. Something about micarta and titanium together just I love. I love how the pivot, you see how the surface of the titanium kind of swells up to meet the pivot above the surface? I think that looks so cool. Really, really cool. No branding whatsoever on this side at all. And then we turn the knife over, flip it over. Oh man, it still looks so good. We have the lock bar, which is mostly covered by the micarta inlay. We have a really cool, very nice clip. It actually works really well too. Flows with the aesthetic, the shape of the knife. The lock bar relief cut is you can barely see it right there, mostly covered up by the inlay as well. And then we see the only branding on the knife right here, the BN for Brian Nadeau, the designer of the knife, and the guy behind Sharp by Design. I love that. I think it's so cool that it's right there on the flipper tab. It just looks cool, and I love how minimal it is, minimalistic. You have to agree this is a good looking knife. You have to. You have to. Not only is it such a sexy knife, but the action is incredible. I'm sure most people know by now, but Brian Nadeau doesn't use a typical detent ball system like on most knives. Instead of a ball, it's a little, he calls it a nub. It's like a little ridge that's a part of the lock bar insert. And it's right at the very edge of the lock bar, so there's no like fiddling with disengaging, and then you're kind of down here, and then you hit a point where you have to get that detent ball up on the tang. With the nub, you disengage, and it's just free swinging all the way down. There's none of that like fumbling with the detent ball thing, dealio. I need a better word for that, because I always have to explain what I'm talking about. There should be a word for when you're, when you get to this point and the detent ball stops it and you have to get up past that. Is there a word for that? There should be, if there's not. So you disengage, you don't have to worry about that. This one has skiff bearings in it, and it improved the smoothness a little bit. Really smooth. And the detent. Oh my goodness. Probably the crispiest flipper action I have felt. There's two distinct clicks. The first one is actually the nub or the detent breaking. Hear that? Usually there's not a sound associated with the breaking of the detent. And then the second is the lockup. So it goes. It is so fun to flip, man. It is so good. It feels unlike any other detent. It's very unique. The flipper tab looks like it might be pokey, but you're on the top of it. You're right here on this little kind of swooped area that's perfect for your finger. It's very comfortable. If you want to get a little more snap to it, you can kind of get more leverage back here, which I actually usually do it like that. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't poke my finger at all. Ergos are fantastic, man. This thing is contoured. Such a good ergonomic handle. Incredible. The way he did the clip, somehow it's barely raised up here at the end, but it still fits in my Carhartt seams. I don't know how, but it does. It's a really cool clip. Milled titanium. One of my favorite parts of the knife is this right here. It almost looks like it could be an integral, but you can see the seam right there, barely. But look at that, isn't that cool? How he did the butt. There's a little lanyard post right in there if you want to use it. Just think that looks so good. A little bit of jimps, or not jimps, little milled slots right here, mostly for looks. And then right where the knife tip sits, right in this thing, just looks so good sitting right in there. Perfectly centered. The clearances are real tight on this knife too. Just looking how, close the scales are to touching the blade. There's not a lot of space in there at all. So it's a pretty thin knife. I think it looks good closed too, which is something not all knives have, is good aesthetics when the knife's closed. But I think it looks great. So this is the small version of the full-size Evo Typhoon. Is it Evo Typhoon? I don't know. Full-size Evo. Which you might prefer if you have bigger hands. For me, this is perfect. I wouldn't want it much bigger than this. Absolutely perfect. I think it's about a 3-inch blade. A little over, like 3 1/4. A little less than 3 1/4. Blade steel, I can't remember. I think it's M390. It wasn't anything like crazy special. It's a good cutter too. Nice and thin behind the edge, real thin. Now, the one slightly annoying thing is you can't really get to this hole for reverse flicking. Sometimes I can do it, but it's not like you're gonna just easily, bam, reverse flick it. So it's really a flipper-only knife. The slot's really for looks, and that's just how it is. If you would have had to change the whole design if you wanted more room in here. So it is what it is. Because the detent is so unbelievably crispy and the flipping action is so good, it doesn't bother me. If the flipper was kind of mushy and crappy, I would be like, oh man, I wish there was a second deployment, but I don't care. I really don't care. So, so recently I've been on kind of a USA-made knives kick. However, this is one of the Chinese-made knives that I would never get rid of. Like I've said, there are exceptions to me. There are exceptions to the rule. I don't want to buy Chinese knives anymore, but there are a few exceptions. This is one of them. Incredible. I highly recommend this knife. Really highly recommend it. And that's about it. Just want to do a mini Evo appreciation video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please like the video before you leave. I'll see you later.